All right, today we're going to talk about something fascinating, the world of sugar dating. It's this whole economy built on really big promises, some pretty complex arrangements, and, as we're about to find out, a reality that can be a lot harsher than you'd think.
So you hear that, right? That's the hook. The entire sales pitch in one single sentence. It sounds like this amazing shortcut, a super simple solution to all the financial pressure that, let's be honest, a lot of young people are under today. But, shortcuts. They don't always take you where you think you're going.
So, is it really that easy? That's the big question we're digging into here. We're going to look at what's promised versus what actually happens, and try to figure out the real cost of this so-called easy money.
Okay, so first up, the easy money promise. Let's really unpack this. What is it that's pulling so many people in? Because the appeal is, it's powerful. On the surface, it looks so simple, so straightforward. But, yeah, there's way more going on underneath.
And we're not talking about some small niche thing here. Look at this number, over 200,000. And that's just young Australian women registered as sugar babies. That is a huge number, and it just goes to show how mainstream this has all become.
So for anyone who's not totally sure what we mean by sugar baby, here's the basic definition. It's usually a younger person looking for a mutually beneficial relationship with someone older and wealthier. And that phrase, mutually beneficial, that's the key. It makes it sound like this perfectly balanced, modern deal. But that balance, it can be a real illusion.
And why are they doing it? Well, these aren't just guesses. These are direct quotes from women in the documentary we're looking at. Finish school without debt, clear my debt, or just covering rent. These are real, practical goals. It's about survival, but it's also about wanting something more. But, what they thought they were signing up for, that glamorous life you see advertised, it pretty quickly slams right into a much, much harsher reality. So let's watch how that whole promise starts to fall apart.
And this just lays it out so perfectly, the massive gap between expectation and reality. On the one hand, you're promised free vacations, paid tuition, cash, freedom. And on the other hand, the reality of those first dates? A free bus ride, a cheese plate, maybe half a bottle of wine. A lot of the time, they were just leaving completely empty-handed. It's not quite the same thing, is it? And this is a huge part of it. It's just so awkward. Think about it. You're on a date, and this quote just nails it. I didn't know how to be like, so am I getting paid for this? She says it would feel like asking her actual dad for money. That whole idea of a mutually beneficial relationship is easy to type on a profile, but trying to actually make that transaction happen in person, it's a completely different story.
So after a bunch of disappointing dates, it starts to sink in. This isn't as simple as just showing up. There's a whole game to it. There are these unspoken rules you have to learn, and that's what separates the people who fail from the ones who actually make it work.
And that's where someone like Sandy comes in. She's a professional sugar baby, and she has a whole playbook. This is really where you see that idea of easy money just evaporate. Suddenly, it's a job. Step 1. Curate your profile, like a marketing campaign. Step 2. Build a friendship, so it's not just about money. And Step 3. Diversify your daddies. Basically, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But even if you have the playbook, the risks are still so real.
One of the women's sisters gives this warning, and it's pretty chilling. If you're smart enough, then you don't go on the date in the first place. You say no online where that's a safe place. A huge part of this game is just screening out dangerous people. And if you make one mistake, the consequences could be serious.
And then there's this other hidden cost, what's called emotional labor. Basically, it's all the work you're doing that you're not getting paid for. We're talking constant texting, sometimes 50 messages a day from a guy you haven't even met yet. All that time, all that energy, having to be on all the time. It's part of the job, but it's completely uncompensated.
Okay, so after all this, learning the rules, putting in all that unpaid work, one of the women finally gets a breakthrough. She finds the one. But this success, this big win, it actually forces a much bigger question out into the open. What are the real terms of the deal here?
Well, if you ask someone from inside the industry, like this event planner, Alan Action, he has a simple answer. He calls it a mutually beneficial relationship. That's his mantra. He paints this picture of empowered men and beautiful younger women making a simple, clean exchange. But that neat little phrase kind of brushes over the huge power imbalance that's often at play, doesn't it?
So what are the terms of that benefit? That's the real question, right? What is actually being exchanged here? And to figure that out, we follow one of the women to New York. She has a date with a guy named David, and on paper, he seems like the perfect sugar daddy.
And the date goes great. So great, in fact, that afterwards, David just hands her $400 in cash. And then he invites her back for a whole weekend, all expenses paid. This is it. This is the prize she's been working for. Real money, a generous offer, and she actually likes the guy. It feels like she's finally cracked the code, like she's won. But winning, well, winning has its own price.
And that brings us to the true cost, because winning the game just means you've reached the final level. On that weekend trip to New York, all those unspoken rules and vague terms, they're about to become very, very explicit.
And this is the moment of truth. She realized, if I'm going to do this, and if I'm going to get the big payoffs, then I have to sleep with these men. It all became crystal clear when David just expected her to stay the night. The line she'd drawn for herself was suddenly right there, and he was asking her to cross it. That whole mutually beneficial thing, it turned out it meant one very specific thing. And for her, that was a deal breaker.
But it wasn't just about drawing a line in the sand. There were all these other hidden costs too. Her relationship with her partner, Jocelyn, was getting strained. She was fighting with her sisters and parents. She felt totally lost in this moral gray area. Basically, in chasing this prize, she was pushing away her entire support system.
Which brings her to this conclusion, and it's a powerful one. She says, my family, my relationships, my community, they're everything to me. Without my circle, I'm lost. In the end, the money, the potential lifestyle, that whole shortcut, none of it was worth what it was costing her most important relationships.
So we end up back where we began, with this idea that nothing comes without a price. Is easy money ever really easy? What starts out as what seems like a simple financial decision turns into this incredibly complicated negotiation of your boundaries, your relationships, your whole sense of self. It really makes you ask, what price are we willing to pay for the things we want? And more importantly, what do we risk losing along the way?